Welcome back, everyone, to a new edition of Pickups. This is going to be the third in the special limited run series of Pickups, so enjoying the background music I chose today from The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. So with that said, the first one we have here, it was a indie developed game that, yeah, if you want physical, of course, you had to go through limited run, obviously. This is a very interesting looking game called To the Moon. Caught my intrigue. The game itself looks really nice. I like the sprite work in the game. That's the thing, if you're a big fan of 2D era games with adventure, I think this is a game you might actually be interested in checking out. And this is a game, like price-wise, when I got, I believe this was like $24.99, so it was actually a relatively cheap game. Probably not a super high in demand game that they decided to make physical, but still very interesting game and a nice addition to the Switch library. Next up we have another indie developed game, which I've already done a full playthrough and a review of back in the past, though that was digital, where this is a physical version. And like you said, or rather see, it says Director's Cut because this has new additional content, which was not in the original version that I played. So I'll be curious to try this in the future and see what differences or what additions were made to this version of the game. Like, if you've seen gameplay of this game, you know it is a pretty game, definitely. I like how they implement the different colors and everything. And the surroundings, the water is beautiful. It's definitely a very interesting game of indie games I've played. Next up, we have a special, of course, physical re-release of the all-time classic Doom game known as Doom 64. Which was an interesting game. I played it many moons ago. Been a long time. I'm just happy that they did decide to do a physical limited release of Doom 64 because it's an all-time classic. Now, fun fact, this may still be available actually on the Best Buy store, because this was one of the limited run games that Best Buy offered on their website. So you can still get this for a good price, since scalpers haven't bought them all yet, thank goodness. Still, nevertheless, it's definitely a classic. Next we go on to the physical re-release of course, Shantae, the original all-time classic. And one of the things I like about this version limited is they did this in like the color scheme logo of like the original Game Boy Color version of the game. Of course, Game Boy Color for like saying Game Boy Color, which I thought was cool. Now, they did briefly also offer a physical re-release of the original Super Nintendo cartridge, or not Super Nintendo, but Game Boy Color cartridge, which I thought was cool, but it sold out like in the snap of a finger. So I had to make do with the Switch version of the game. So it's definitely a classic that was originally released in 2002. Hard to believe Shantae as a series is 19 years old. But it is nice to see a remaster and a re-release physical form for the original Shantae. Now, if only I could get my hands on a reasonable price copy of The Pirate's Curse, because that game is skyrocketed. Last on the Switch front, we have, of course, the classic beat-em-up game, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, the game, Complete Edition, which includes all extra content. It is definitely a love letter to the old school 2D beat 'em ups. This is definitely a classic done by actually Ubisoft. I was happy though they did do a physical re-release, and I believe you might still be able to get this game through regular sources. So the price hasn't gone out of control yet, thank goodness. But still, if you are a classic beat 'em up fan, I do highly recommend Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. It's a fun, great, old school beat 'em up that I think you'll enjoy. Plus, if you are a fan of the comic or the movie, I also recommend checking this out. Now we'll move on to a few PS4, and then that'll be it for this edition. First up, a interesting looking game that caught my attention just from the artwork alone. It is called, like it says, After Party. You basically end up in a spirit world of sorts. And there's like a few specific places you go to. And one of the cool things also about this game was the fact it included it as part of the limited thing, a special fold-out physical copy of like the map of the game world, which I actually appreciate that they did something like that. I wish more games would do stuff like that. So it's definitely a very unique indie game, I'll say the least. Next, we have, of course, the physical version of the re-release master, of course, Samurai Jack Battle Through Time. Now, originally there was Samurai Jack game, of course, released on the GameCube, but it became insanely expensive. So, luckily there's a re-release, and this is actually available also on Best Buy's website. So I recommend getting it while you can get it for a reasonable price range. But if you are a classic fan of like the old school Toonami series and stuff, I do recommend picking up Samurai Jack. It is definitely a love letter to the series as a whole, and I think if you grew up with Samurai Jack, definitely this will hit you in the nostalgia factor. It's a solid game all around, and it is nice to see a classic like this get re-released. Second to last, we have a special limited release, and sadly this one actually sold out very quick, and that is Art of Fighting Anthology, which included, of course, includes all three original Art of Fighting games. Definitely a classic SNK series. That's one thing I like about Limited Run, is they've shown a lot of love towards SNK, which I appreciate. Speaking of the last edition of this version of Limited Run, another SNK game, and this is the physical release for, of course, Kina Fighters 2002 Unlimited Match. Now, what's so special about this version of KOF 2002 is the fact that it includes online gameplay, and yes, the online is rollback netcode. So, and it even says right there, now with rollback netcode. And yeah, like you see, there are also 66 characters. There's a lot of additional content in this, and there's the actual character roster. It definitely is cool, and I appreciate them doing this physical release, or rather, which I hope they end up doing this treatment for like all SNK games. But it's definitely a great thing, and if you are an SNK fan, I think you will appreciate this quite a bit. But with that said, that's it for this edition of Limited Run Pickups. Stay safe, and I'll see y'all next time. Same YouTube time, same YouTube channel.